5 seconds to submergence. Submergence deep into the absurd.
We got Self-Reliance Part 2 with Mynaa Miesnowan. I'm very excited for this one. He just sent me a nice little poem by Charles Bukowski, which I'm going to start off with. It kind of goes into the genius of the crowd and how indubitably intelligent mass herds of people are, just how smart they are, and just like what good they do for society. Yeah, let's go. The Genius of the Crowd by Charles Bukowski. There is enough treachery, hatred, violence, absurdity in the average human being to supply any given army on any given day. And the best at murder are those who preach against it. And the best at hate are those who preach love. And the best at war, finally, are those who preach peace. Those who preach God need God. Those who preach peace do not have peace. Those who preach peace do not have love. Beware the preachers, beware the knowers, beware those who are always reading books, beware those who either detest poverty or are proud of it. Beware those quick to praise, for they need praise in return. Beware those who are quick to censor, they are afraid of what they do not know. Beware those who seek constant crowds, for they are nothing alone. Beware the average man, the average woman. Beware their love is average, seeks average. But there is genius in their hatred. There is enough genius in their hatred to kill you, to kill anybody, not wanting solitude, not understanding solitude. They will attempt to destroy anything that differs from their own, not being able to create art. They will not understand art. They will consider their failure as creators, only as a failure of the world. Not being able to love fully, they will believe your love incomplete, and then they will hate you, and their hatred will be perfect, like a shining diamond, like a knife, like a mountain, like a tiger, like hemlock, their finest art. Ooh. Thanks for sending that, man. Thanks for coming on again.
And yeah, thanks for having me. It's it's a bright little ditty, something to warm up your day, bring some cheer into the world.
Yeah, that would bring cheer and joy to anyone, I think. I mean, but I like the reference of hemlock at the end to Socrates.
Right. Well, I mean, again, it's understandable. I think about the human tendency and or maybe even just the animal nature of it all, where you see someone and the first things you're observing before you're even thinking about it, it's like you're looking at their eyes, their hands, their a million little seen and unseen cues that evolution honed over or was honed by evolution over the course of who knows how long, really, right? To the T. And there's that aspect that we don't, as creatures who have these sort of social agreements, there's like that aspect of life that we don't even talk about, but it's just kind of natural to our apprehension towards each other, and our paranoia. And then if you have some blue people, of course they're going to say screw the red people. It's only natural.
And the thing is, like, they'll crucify you, like if you're different or if you have weird new ideas, like they'll essentially they'll crucify you, right?
Okay, back to looking at people's eyes and where are they looking, where are they headed, what's in their hands. Think about it, like you have a neighbor and that neighbor keeps disappearing, and you got to wonder, well, where are they going? What are they doing? I mean, there's been songs and poems written to these effects. There's one by Tom Waits. It's called "What's He Doing in There?" And it's just kind of this, it's a little exploration of that. And that's more of a spoken word piece. Actually, it's not one of his actual songs. And then I guess whether we look at the subject matter, you could almost call this a poem, like what Nietzsche taught us. Like that's one take on it. from a psychoanalytic perspective, like you could say Jung and Freud and some of these other concepts. It's like that very notion of staying close to someone, and that very notion of keeping tabs on someone, and that very notion of thinking you know someone, and then why is it otherwise so painful if someone betrays you or turns against you, and it's like, well, because like the web of human relationships and human existence and coexistence, it's like it seems to be a very delicate web and a very delicate substance, and it's easily disrupted. So, someone disappears and comes back, and the question immediately is, well, where have you been? I mean, think of you think of like the proverbial case, like a husband doesn't come home for a few days, his wife's either, mad at him and or wondering if he's dead.
Well, I was in heaven, dear. I got resurrected by God.
I'd ask, how'd you get back? Yeah.
Man. All right. Well,
I mean, obviously there's corollaries in this, because I was just thinking, to get to the end of this, and he says, that's the genius of the crowd, right? And the notion is that, that if I think of America and then Europe and all the world that has been shaped by Christianity and its legacy of the communal sense it instills and the values, both the under the hood, the ones that are seen and demonstrated, and the ones that run under the hood, and kind of behind it all, like I think of pity, for example. But that's also put on a center stage. It does wind up being a very individual focused. I mean, for the longest time, the church operated to, this is the power and this is the direction that things are going. And the way it shaped people over time, just what was in that direction. But it seems somewhat universal to the degree that, if that's the genius of the crowd and, it started on a small scale and eventually reached a civilizational level. What about the genius of a government? That's a much different ruling body than a king or a philosopher or even a smaller aristocracy or
even the crowd.
Yeah, and you think of how much does that change, because the crowd isn't just a small mob in the center of town, and if they want to communicate, they have courier pigeons or whatever it may have been over for telephones and telegrams and all these things are relatively new.
It's more like a super integrated, extremely complex, multi-level
nightmare. Well, I mean, no, because I'm going in a direction with this, because again, the genius of the crowd produces the genius of a government.
Yes.
And it seems to run of its own volition. You don't even need a people solidify, and it's like, a story emerges and, a government takes root, and it happens. It's almost like planting a garden, it seems. People and societies in a very real sense. So if I bring it up in terms of modern governments, because remember, a big part of last time's conversation, we were talking about Big Brother's bean counters, right? The quintessential, lover of Big Brother. And do you remember how that book ends?
Yeah, he gets brainwashed, and he's just back at it again.
But do you remember the specific line?
I don't. Can you say it?
I think it's either he or Winston, but it's Winston loved Big Brother. That's how it ends. Yeah, and that's just a reminder for everyone that, regardless of what you're hoping is gonna happen or be built, that there's no guarantee that you get the ending you want or the happy ending. The Europeans of the last century.
Hopeless.
Oh yeah, it is quite oppressive.
It was like, how would anyone ever rebel or change?
Right. You hear him. To him, he's saying the hope is in the proles. And, a poem like this reminds you that no, it's not. It never has been, as a matter of fact. That's why they've always been the proles. And that's why they're always shaped by, again, once upon a time, an aristocracy, never mind questions of nobility. And then in the modern days, it's mass institutions, it's mass corporations, it's mass governments. And, the way these are all networked together, built in from that came, this kind of algorithmic sorting and marketing of humanity. And, no one, like, this was never anyone's dream. Like, I could tell you 10 years ago in America, 20 years ago in America, 30 years in America, this was never anyone's hope or dream in a sense. But it's what was inevitably built anyway. Like, no one voted for it. No one asked for it. Once upon a time, they look to the future and they're like, maybe it'll be flying cars. And it's like, well, no, it's multi-layered neural networks that form the world's largest police states. So if I asked you, do you know what China's surveillance, or the CCPs specifically, do you know what their surveillance network is called?
Skynet.
Yeah. And it's like, I've never heard anyone talk about it. It's like, wait, like we as in at least a part of humanity, right? We as in humanity built Skynet, like unironically, right? Yeah. It's like, well, and it seems to be that is what they wanted, because, how much they've changed over time from Mao's vision back when, the Cultural Revolution, like, I don't, it's actually not too, what's happening in this country reminds me, in terms of immediate history corollaries, the stories that came out of that remind me closest, because what it fundamentally was students attacking teachers, the youth attacking the elderly. And the reason why this was because you had a younger, more rootless generation under great threat who could be easily molded and basically cut off from thousands of years of history and culture and religion and everything that was the nation and people of China. And he was able to funnel that. It was a very powerful conduit, or you could say medium. And and you'd wonder, well, what were these people's vision? And, the people on the front lines never realized that, of course, they're the first ones to go, because you cannot have, if you're trying to build an ordered society, then inevitably people like that have no place in it. Like, this isn't even like what, like, this is like whenever you see government operatives in like fiction, there's the sort of shit they'll even say. Just like I mentioned that the closest thing in modern fiction to Big Brother's bean counter was Agent Smith. And he was a virus who took over both all the machines and the humans. And this is what I guess the bigger, if I could cut to the chase, the question is, if this is the shaping of humanity, then to me, it seems that humanity is going to resemble more like an Agent Smith sort of, like the amount of, I don't know, you could say instinct and mind that has to be cut off and channeled and repressed and maybe even medicate, right? Depending on how far you want to go with it, to fit people into these large, kind of faceless, brainless systems. Because it's the ironic thing about Skynet in China is that initially it was terrible. It didn't work. It didn't have enough data. It didn't have enough data points, right?
Yeah, but now it has millions of data points, billions maybe,
and better software and hardware to deal with it. And again, it was built slowly over time. The concentration camps that are barely get their fair share of coverage, because you would think like, hey, look, supposedly people care about other people. Supposedly people concern themselves with atrocity, and it's like, okay, look, it's right now there's. The U.S. may have the world, because there's a corollary in this too, right? The U.S. may have the world's biggest prison system, but it's like the world's biggest concentration camp was actually, and brainwashing facility and all that stuff was built over here. It's literally like, how do we get these bad thoughts out of you? Oh, you're religious. I guess we never. I sidetracked from the analytic perspective, but like Jung calling kind of. Certain people, a lot of people analyze like a lot of the totalitarians of the last century, right? Like they were effective mediums and they were effective at, channeling and shaping the people around them. And they had a certain magnetism. And then you look at like, okay, if you have because think about the differences. Over here, we have first names and last names. It's like in China, your surname, like that's your first name. Like you technically actually don't even have a first name, because if your surname comes first, then that's your first name. And then secondarily, you're an individual, right? Secondarily, and this is to me, this is a difference of a shame society and a pity society. In the shame society, the family comes first. In the pity, it's like, well, because you're an individual and individuals matter so much or matter at all, we pity you. Over there, it's like, oh no, you represent us. It's more clannish in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just cultural analysis from, it's been going on a long time.
It's been going on since we've existed.
Yeah, trying to better understand exactly who and what we are and what we're doing. And it's like, okay, well, look what it manifests. And it's like, well, that's nothing new. But here's what's interesting to me about it is that the failed totalitarian attempts of the last century out of Europe, fascism and communism, they were colossal failures. Thank God, right? Like thank hell that that worked out, because it's today, but yet you still have firm believers in these things. And of course, the answer you always get is that's not true communism. If you said that about the CCP, in a sense, you wouldn't be wrong. But yet at the same time, this is always the excuse. If someone were to go around and say, well, like fascism works, it's just they got it wrong. Like anyone who looks at these things, and you could just use, that's the perpetual excuse for something that for a bad idea that doesn't pan out, you can just say that forever.
Well, it's because utopias aren't real.
Right. They're not. You got to account for a lot of things here. And so the question is, it's a certain reality of a burgeoning population of China. Like in the case of the CCP, they got ahead of the curve of modernity, going, well, if we can channel these people into this direction, we can better control them. And that is the direction they took.
Yeah.
And now we see what that fruition is in the modern day. And again, it resembles very much, we're back to Big Brother's bean counter. You are, the notion of you, even the notion of you is a flaw in the pattern. You are, you asking your questions, you getting in the way, whatever it is that you're doing to obstruct the progress here. There's an aspect to it. It's got a spiritual corollary. It's almost like you could see that in Manifest Destiny, in let's say a country like the United States. And when I think of this one, it's like what I think of going on right now, to me, it looks like a Manifest Destiny 2.0. You got a lot of idealists, and they're saying like, you're either on our side or you're in the way. And it's like, oh, I've heard this before. This is Manifest Destiny. Like we've heard of something like this before.
Yeah.
It's the great leap, nowhere. Over here, it seemed to work in China, because I think it just worked with, if you consider it like how deep these things run, not just racial differences, not just any other differences that people may wonder about. You also have to question the different philosophical timeline, because they didn't grow up with thousands of years of Jesus. They had their own systems, their own methods, their own philosophers, their own philosophies, both internal and external from, other places as well. And that's, that culture has long been that interchange anyway, right? And then, obviously the history of East meeting West, getting more involved in each other's affairs and further shaping and conquering each other. And
in a sense, they were the most self-reliant.
Yeah, in a very real sense, because they
all their philosophies were very just like Oriental philosophy, like Buddhism, Hinduism.
Right. Well, and then
Taoism,
their most revered. But then some of their most revered teachings, go back to government officials, Lao Tzu. That's Taoism. Confucianism. And the funny thing is Mao gutted it, but the CCP again seems to be getting ahead of the curve. Like if they look over here and see all the disasters going on in America, with not just politically speaking, but I mean the population themselves. You have a depressed, repressed population, an angry population, a relatively rootless and population. And they've actually, I've caught some articles here and there about, and I only ever know how much, because I always find it interesting that people talk about this stuff at all, or that a lot of their propaganda shows up in our media news outlets, right? Just articles that are pure propaganda. If you listen to, I mentioned that in one of the other podcasts, right? That article about Jackie Chan and his little struggle session on Twitter with the CCP. And, it's just like, okay, that's fascinating. Oh, excuse me.
So let's bring all this back to self-reliance, back to Emerson.
Right. Are we government dependents? Are we still men? Is this an era ruled by, is it governed by men or pseudo men dominated by public opinion? And it seems to be a mix of that and large scale governments and algorithms.
It's a big soup of wills, right?
And bad art.
Yeah.
Like this, their finest art.
So
there you go. I guess that's the question. It's like, what's our finest art? And it seems to be bad art.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends.
In these cases, like it's already built, man.
Yeah.
Skynet is built. The concentration camp is there. Like if I asked you on disbelieving atrocities, and I think it was published in the New York Times. I think it was called the Nightmare That Is a Reality, and in 1940s somewhere, and it's this guy trying to say, hey, there's and again, too many people were making money, too many people were in on it, too many people didn't care, and it's just, this is a story again, and here we are. We're loving people, or we're a pitiful people, because that's big these days. Feel bad for people.
Well, also, but the thing about the Holocaust is that there was so much propaganda back then that, like,
of course, and there's so much
what to believe.
Sure. Oh, no. And in that regard, again, this is what's different, right? Because the similarities, because there's a lot of differences, not just in national and racial characteristics of nations that go pathologically collectivist. Because then I guess the other question is, well, if this is what they built, is it so much pathological collectivism, or is it just the logical conclusion of Christianity over here? And then in China, where the CCP seeming to be one of the few successful implementations of communism, in the sense that they could at least wrench their society in this big bean counter direction in a more stable manner, that only took, mass starvation, forced, basically famine, which is usually man-made, or almost, I think they say almost all man-made these days. I don't know how, could with other factors, but
I'm not sure.
It's like, that's, you're talking about the genocides of tens of millions at the end of the day. And it's like, that's the genius of the crowd, or a government, and what do these figures ever represent? It's like, well, that's the will of the people. That's the voice of the people. They put their bet on these ideas, these people, these systems. Why? Because they couldn't do it themselves. Of course they can't. They didn't have the vision. They still don't have the vision. Very few people do. Very few people understand. And it's like, look who has their hand on a vision that actually seems to be working. And it's like, oh, it's totalitarian governments. Like is that the way of the future?
Only a few people will be able to spark the fire to light it up and spread it.
Yeah. Well, everyone else just say every time, it's like, well, it seems like the point of philosophy and religion, all these things over time, was to shape man. And it's like, well, it turns out it worked better than anyone could ever imagine, because people just, we can exist as blocks of wood, just, like maybe we don't even need surnames. Maybe just we call each other blob 1, blob 2, or fungus 1, fungus 2. And I guess, Emerson gets into it here. You wanna carry us off where we left off?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we left off with the section where it ends. Though I confess with shame, I sometimes succumb and give the dollar. It is a wicked dollar, which by and by I shall have the manhood to withhold. Okay. Virtues are, in the popular estimate, rather the exception than the rule. There is the man and his virtues. Men do what is called a good action, as some piece of courage or charity, much as they would pay a fine in expiation of daily non-appearance on parade. Their works are done as an apology or extenuation of their living in the world, as invalids and the insane pay a high board. Their virtues are penances. I do not wish to expiate, but to live. My life is for itself and not for a spectacle. I much prefer that it should be of a lower strain, so it be genuine and equal, that it should be glittering and unsteady. I wish it to be sound and sweet, and not to need diet and bleeding. I ask primary evidence that you are a man, and refuse this appeal from the man to his actions. I know that for myself it makes no difference whether I do or forbear those actions which are reckoned excellent. I cannot consent to pay for a privilege where I have intrinsic right. Few and mean as my gifts may be, I actually am, and do not need for my own assurance or the assurance of my fellows any secondary testimony.
Right. He's saying he doesn't need us, right? And he's right. But that's not the purpose of this.
Well, he's saying that
Go on.
that we don't need virtue, right? We don't need to be virtuous, or at least we don't need to pretend to be virtuous. We don't need to be virtuous on account of other people. We can be virtuous on our own, and our own definition of what virtue is, and our own definition of what it means to, like, you shouldn't be good to someone because you feel obligated to be good to them. You should be good to someone because you want to be good to them, or because you want to be nice to them, or because you want to give them something, not because you feel bad for them, or because you feel like you should do something for them. You give straight from yourself, right?
Oh, sure. Look, let's coin a phrase. This might exist already, but a gift given in pity is a shit gift.
Yeah.
Is that a saying? I feel like it should be. I feel like there's one of like anger or something, but pity.
And then we'll say it's your
I like
quote.
the I like it. I like the section where he's saying, "Don't be a doormat." Their works are done as apology or extenuation of their living in the world. As invalids and the insane pay a high board. Oh, that's so good. that is the most like plain and beautiful, jab that you could ever see.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I'm comparing you to an invalid or the insane.
Yeah. It's can you kind of go over that? Kind of just give your thoughts on that?
Sure. Let's see. Men do what is called a good action as some piece of courage or charity, much as they would pay a fine and expiation, right? He's saying like, okay, you get caught doing something, you got to pay a fine, you hurry up, you fork over the money and you're done with it.
Yeah.
Right. He's saying this is what virtues are to people. It's actually a toll. It's actually a tax. It's actually a penalty. It is why I said pity's a shit gift.
Yeah, it's like people who say, "Oh yeah, I'm a good person," but they hate like being a good person, or they hate doing all the things that feel
the old
like
irony
that make them feel like a good person. Like, are they really a good person if they hate doing things that, or if they hate like doing all their so-called good actions? It
depends. You would have to analyze how they see themselves. Like you would need to analyze. It's a good question. You'd need to analyze. Yeah. I think we would need more points, or we would need to examine someone as an example of it to best, I think, illustrate it.
Well, it's kind of like Nietzsche saying, "Hey, like all you good-natured people, you're weak because like you don't even have claws, right? Like the only reason that you're good is because you can't be evil." Does that make any sense?
Oh yes, yeah. And Skynet will see to that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's like so again, there's no virtue in that. It's like, oh, you're polite and subservient because you're too weak to be anything else. Yeah. That's not a good thing. And if anything, it means you're dangerous, because if you don't have any cognizance of how dangerous an animal is, like it could be a small animal, it could seriously hurt you or mess you up, right? And then you think of how big how much damage a single human being can do. Single human being can,
they can do a lot.
Change history, level a city, who knows, right?
Yeah.
And it's usually, and then again, but and then if we're honest, it's like, well, we don't really exist as singular entities. There's a bigger connection here. There's a bigger pattern. I also wanted to add, I was thinking about it earlier. It popped in my head when you were reading it that this guy, and I think we referenced it before, but this also gets into Nietzsche's own conception. Seems to be one of his favorite or one of his most beloved lines along the lines of like, a man's virtues are his own, and he has as many as he has need for. It's not a matter of like, oh, look, this one is, here's my public face. Here's my private face. And this reminds me also all the way back to Schopenhauer's Educator, where he talked about the age of public opinion, and that with the age of public opinion, what that actually means is that people kill time in private and they otherwise piss away time in private. And then publicly, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but that, like, if I compared that to the modern day to know how people behave and say, well, this is their public face, and I know privately that with all that goes a lot of time wasting, it's because that's the definition of public opinion. It has nothing to do with you and your virtue or me and my virtue. And he even starts it. Virtues are, in the popular estimate, rather the exception than the rule. It's not, find a man who's a law unto himself. It's very rare. And most people, and I guess another way of saying it is, the exception can't be the rule. My life is for itself and not for a spectacle. I much prefer it would be a lower strain. See, this makes me think he's just saying, I'm doing it on the down low. Like there's a steadiness in it, and not just that.
Well, there's also there's a certain, you shouldn't have to force being virtuous, right?
Yes.
Well, it's like the little things.
This gets into kind of back to the different kind of virtue, philosophical virtue timeline. This is the definition of the struggle session.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we're literally going to struggle to prove who is more virtuous. And it's like, well, if this is a puppet show, just who's it for? Like, who's behind? Once more, I guess I'm asking you again, who's behind the curtain?
Well,
spooky thought. Don't answer it.
Well, it's kind of a ghost.
Like, we're not even going to need human beings to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, philosophy will inevitably, if philosophy becomes irrelevant to humanity, it's because we've become fully automated, and like we've devised a mechanical system that can fully cater to our mythological and our unthinking and our unconscious nature.
Yeah, well, so I've heard
it'll be a puppet show within a puppet show almost.
No, I've heard this on the Tangentially Speaking podcast with Chris Ryan, and he always just says, okay, yeah, I mean, if the CEO of Exxon decided that, you know what, I'm going to quit today, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't change a single thing, because the corporation itself has all these things ingrained within it that would cause for someone else to just be the new CEO, right? Like, the board would just pick a new CEO. That's all that would happen. Then absolutely nothing would change, and then Exxon would still, be the same as it is, right?
Yeah. Oh no. It's like within the realm of thought that concerns us most importantly,
that we humans have created these things called ideas, which controls not only us in the present, but will control people in far into the future.
Sure. Yeah. No, well, I mean, that's the lie of, that's been the lie of the present forever. The lie of the present is we're either self-determining it, or we're figuring it out, or the good news is going to be here tomorrow, or the end's here tomorrow, or we're going to figure it out tomorrow, or tomorrow is the perfect day, or tomorrow is when we achieve our vision, or 100 years from now, right? It's always been there. And the reality is, it's people doing what they've always done. They fight, they live, they love, they die. But there's a
That's why we
question of
need
how we organize
self-reliance.
ourselves. Well,
Mhm.
that's back to the irony of, again, if the CCP, I saw these articles, I forgot to mention this earlier, got sidetracked. But in these articles, they were saying that the CCP, and I'd have to double check the validity of it and stuff, but at least at a front glance, they were saying that they've been introducing promotions of masculinity and Confucianism and older values. And I'm wondering do they see that as a necessary tempering of their people? Like, it's like, okay, this is where it becomes very Brave New World, where it's like, okay, how much more alcohol do we put in this batch's, in this batch's tank to make them the perfect drone for their chosen life or for their lot in life?
Yeah.
They're like, okay, we followed this weird form of communism that somehow could only take root in Asian soil, but failed everywhere else in the West, and it worked for them. And then it was like, okay, now we're shifting gears to a pseudo-capitalistic, pseudo-communist, right? Like, to the degrees these words mean anything. Because I think when you're dealing with Skynet, it's like these words really cease to have much meaning anyway. So again, the question is, okay, well, what are we actually crafting for the future? Because if they are successful, depending on how far they go and the fact that they have fingers in so many other pies, especially developing nations. I mean, a lot of it's half-assed. A lot of it has its problems. And, but in terms of I guess there's a question of, okay, do you consider Skynet a credible threat to humanity? And it's a weird question to ask because, I guess if people have been under a rock or never saw it,
Skynet, what are we threatening? What aspects of humanity are we threatening?
That's the exact question.
That's exactly
what we're getting to. Of how well does a Skynet work for humanity? And I guess so far the answer seems to be perfectly, because they built it and they funded it and they're happy to roll it out and be a part of it. And again, no one ever thinks in the moment like, oh, we're building an atrocity, or we're building concentration camp, and then eventually it's like you can't lie about it anymore because everyone could smell it and everyone could see it. And it's like it's in our media daily.
Have you ever seen The Walking Dead?
Yeah, you like it? Or go on.
So there's this season. There's this guy named Negan, right? He's kind of like the head of this one group of survivors. It's basically a cult. Then they all basically say, like, "I am Negan." Like, as in they're all kind of like him. They're all kind of like the spirit of.
Oh yeah, that's like, again, I think that's exactly how it goes down. Whether you have a baseball bat with barbed wire and people to back you up, or that's a nation and whatever story they're crafting for themselves and their future selves, because it's a good example.
You cut out for a second at because, or did you just space?
No. I know I actually paused.
Okay,
I know it almost seemed like it was out of the question, right? But okay. I paused.
Let's move on to the next paragraph.
Yes, keep moving.
No, the one after the next one is pretty long. Okay. What I must do is all that concerns me, not what the people think. This rule, equally arduous in actual and in intellectual life, may serve for the whole distinction between greatness and meanness. It is the harder because you will always find those who think they know what is your duty better than you know it. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. Yes, that is so.
That's one of his most famous. I think that last bit, that's probably the one you'll see quoted the most.
Yeah, but what I must do is all that concerns me, not what the people think. That's just it's very simple and obviously the last few lines gets quoted the most, but that first line there is kind of just it's very simple. People say it all the time. It's very cliche, stop worrying about what people think, but it's really
it's the difference between repression and the world. Actually, it's the difference between, I'd say, the pathos of distance and just mere repression.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why things become cliches, right?
Right. Quote unquote common sense or common knowledge.
Yeah.
It's got a correlate. It's like I almost see it like you see there's a, as a writer, there's a rhythm and a verse, and there is in the words themselves, So in the last paragraph, he says, I actually am. And he's like, I am, and do not need for my own assurance or the assurance of my fellows any secondary testimony. And, this is echoed again here. Let's see, where is it at? Those who think they know their duty better than you.
Yeah.
He's like, he just got done telling you, I actually am. I don't need testimony and I don't need, assurance.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, someone who can actually say that, is few and far between, about as few and far between as someone who's beyond reproach in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the way people are always nipping and nabbing and bothering each other, because that's what exactly, like when he says, like, there's a poem where Bukowski talks about crabs in a bucket and that whole thing of, may serve for the whole distinction and greatness of meanness. It is harder because you will always find those who think they know what is your duty better than you. Just that whole thing. Again, I'm always reminded of, like, hey, that one's going too far. Hey, that one's trying to reach escape velocity. Hey, that one's trying to go his own way. Like, nope, drag him back. Bring him back.
Yeah.
Like we got to keep our eyes on you. It's
actually like I am Negan. Come back.
Right. Well, again, yeah, because
it's supposed to be Negan too.
Well, ask Skynet. It's a liability. Yeah. The whole point of Skynet is to say, like, judging from your facial expressions in this multi-layered neural network, and these algorithms, they're looking at your face. They're seeing how happy are you, what do you think? They're trying to discern what you're thinking. They're trying to figure out what your thought crimes are.
Have you seen the movie The Circle?
And humans used to do it, and now it seems like we have AIs to do it. Like that, this is just where we're at now. We still have humans to do it, and I'm wondering if someday, like maybe it'll just be a virtual reality, and we'll just have some like virtual god to tyrannize us, or some virtual public. We won't even have to deal with each other.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Have you seen the movie The Circle?
The Circle? No.
It's like it has like Emma Watson and what's his name, Tom Hanks in it, and there's like Emma, she works for this social media corporation basically, and then it like starts like inventing all this technology where like, oh yeah, you can vote from our app by putting your social security in it, or like they have all these cameras and they motivate people. You got to keep sharing because sharing is caring. You got to share everything that you do in your life. And then like some people go like full, where they like just have a camera around their neck like at all times, and they just show the world like what they do at all times. Basically, it's super creepy.
You talking about social media?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, well, I mean that's in the context of the movie, but then it's just funny because by the time we get to the the concept, the end of the basically the end of the concept, it's like, oh yeah, that's just like that's a step, maybe that's a few steps down the line.
Yeah, I mean it's just like
or it's
that's just like way too like intrusive.
Yeah, I mean,
and then all the people they push it, right? They're like, oh, you're not doing it, you're not videotaping your whole life.
Oh man,
like,
I held out.
You?
Oh, okay, yeah, no, actually, I'm not gonna give some of my backwater ways away. I was like talking to people online. I was like, no, man, I haven't really, other than for some business and stuff here and there. It's like I haven't used social media in 10 years, and it's like people didn't understand what that meant. Like they didn't understand the difference therein.
Mm-hmm.
Like to them, it was like, oh, what do you want for lunch? Like a sandwich or something? It's like, no, I'm actually like, I'm telling you something important about me. Like I did.
Dude, this is a total like side thing, but have you ever had toasted peanut butter and jelly with bacon on it? So good.
No, I don't think I have.
Dude, you got to try it. It is so dank. So there was this place in Moscow, Idaho, and it's called a bagel shop. And then I just go in there, just drunk. And then I'd ask, hey, could I have like a toasted bagel with peanut butter and jelly and bacon?
Do they mind that you're drunk?
Oh yeah. Oh no, of course not, man. It's the bagel shop in a college town.
Gotcha.
They're
That
open.
makes
They're
sense.
open till 3 a.m.
Yeah, they're like, please, like if we ban the drunks, we'd lose most of our business.
Yeah. But anyways, like there's something in that, right? Like that's a novel meal, right? Like if everyone was just like, oh, peanut butter and jelly with bacon, that's disgusting. How dare you, you weirdo? You're supposed to just have
Oh, well, I
PB
mean,
and J.
you can see it, like it seems pretty obvious, you know. You got maple and bacon and all the other sweets and bacons that go together. Savory herbs as well, which have certain sweetnesses.
Yeah, you think? I mean, I've heard people say, "Man, that's disgusting." Like, why would you do that?
Well, Cretins. Let's see. I'm curious. Remember last time I typed Cretin into Microsoft Word? Microsoft Word was like there's a little there's a little line under it, and I was like, some people might find this word offensive. I don't remember if it was Word or some other program, but I saw it and it was funny because it's like, well,
Really?
Microsoft also built a lab or not a lab, a basically a tech firm in China that basically was the entire start of Skynet. So it's like, okay, which is more offensive, Microsoft and Microsoft Word? You know, the word Cretin or Skynet? Like, is Microsoft telling me that Cretin is a word that might hurt someone's feelings? Is that them telling me that Skynet disapproves? Is that Skynet communicating with me?
Maybe.
I'm just asking the serious questions here. And, you know, I hope, you know, it's be funny, you know, people listen like, oh, it's some conspiracy theory. It's like, no, it's like they called it Skynet.
Well,
I'm just talking about their neural network and their surveillance state.
but at the same time, like think of it this way. Like sure, but they're not like restricting your ability to use the word, and they're not going to punish you for using the word. They're just letting you know, hey, like just letting you know, some people might find that offensive if you use it. So like we told you, like you don't have to listen. So
Right.
like go ahead.
Well,
with
yeah,
whatever
but
you
it's
do.
bullshit. It's bullshit because
Yeah.
they'll make you drink hemlock anyway, you know? So,
Yeah.
you know, at what point, you know, again, we learn better. We learn to be better readers through Nietzsche and from Nietzsche. Like,
Yeah.
like, nope.
But like the thing is, well, that's like the whole. Have you heard the song "Dogs" by Pink Floyd?
Yes. Great song.
Yeah. Yeah. Near the end, they're like, they trained you to not spit in the fan, right? They told you not spit in the fan because like you should just like someone shouldn't tell you to not spit in the fan because once you spit in the fan, it'll blow right back into your face and you'll learn from there, right?
Yeah.
Like when I touched a stove, like a hot stove when I was a little kid, like I never touched hot stove ever again in my life. Like,
Right. Well, I mean,
I learned my lesson.
right,
fast.
right. But I mean, and then now apply it psychologically, and you see psychologically speaking, yes, we're very weak, we're very brittle.
Yeah.
Like in mass, we are weak and brittle and afraid, deathly afraid. Again, like look at the lengths we go. Like Skynet, concentration camps. Like that's how scared people are for their survival.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's move on to this next paragraph.
Yes.
Okay. This one's long.
Oh wait, no.
bear with
Actually,
me.
well, real quick. Even though it has become the cliche Emerson, let me at least say one thing about it. That last line.
Yeah.
Is easy to in the world to live after the world's opinion, right? He's saying it's easy to go along, right? No friction at all. It's easy in solitude to live after your own, because in theory, no friction at all. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude, right? And it's like, okay, now you are amidst competing and bristling forces, and there's a question of how do you stand then? You know, like because resistance will otherwise destroy you very quickly, depending on, you know, if spitting in the fan is a mild form of resistance, you know, that you're right, because you're coming up against a force and you're working against it. You're getting some blowback there. You know, but here's the thing, you know, if you don't use your muscles, they will atrophy. And if you don't use your brain, like, you know, Brave New World.
Yeah.
In 1984. But I mean, maybe it's for the better. Maybe this will secure humanity's future. Maybe we need to turn the planet into one giant daycare center. Maybe we really are that childlike. Maybe we are that sleepy. You know, maybe Heraclitus was right. Maybe the Buddha was right. Maybe all these pessimists and stuff, right? Well, could be. I'm not I'm not saying it is or it isn't. If I'll say this, when it comes to like prediction and prophecy, if you predict only bad things, people can never hate you for it, because then if it's wrong, then people can, be happy about that. But in the meantime, I'll say maybe that is humanity's destiny. Maybe it really is that, for all the talk of nobility and greatness over the years, it's like, nope, giant daycare center, Skynet, boom, got it covered. Make sure they have lots of...
You gotta watch the Brave New World TV series on Peacock. It's so good.
I don't think I need to.
No, but no, you don't need to, but it's like they kind of like change the story a little bit though.
Sure.
And like in a sense, like the ending's almost darker.
Yeah.
So, like in the book, like he dies, right? John dies, he's like hanging, and then he's like turning in like different circles and stuff. But in the TV series, do you mind if I spoil it?
Well, tell you what. No, I probably would. Like, I'm probably not going to watch it, but go ahead. Why not?
All right. So essentially, he's in love with like some woman, right? Like John the Savage is in love with some woman, and I forgot who she was and like what role she played in the story. But anyways, like in the end, he's just like in this house, and then he's just like hanging out and talking to her, but only she's a hologram. She's not real. She's just like artificial intelligence. And then he just spends his whole life just like hanging out with the artificial intelligent fake her.
Yeah, again, it's not even, I don't even know, that's not even that many steps down the line, to the degree that I think in many of these, with a lot of these sci-fi concepts, it's like, we were already there a while ago, or we're much closer than you can imagine. Or you could say that maybe its physiological and sociological effects are thus that it might as well be as dark as they make it look.
Okay, I'll move on.
Yep, that's a good time.
I'm just going to turn my phone. There we go. Turn it this way. The objection to conforming to usages that have become dead to you is that it scatters your force. It loses your time and blurs the impression of your character. If you maintain a dead church, contribute to a dead Bible society, vote with a great party either for the government or against it, spread your table like base housekeepers. Under all these screens, I have difficulty to detect the precise man you are. And, of course, so much force is withdrawn from your proper life. But do your work, and I shall know you. Do your work, and you shall reinforce yourself. A man must consider what a blind man's buff is this game of conformity. If I know your sect, I anticipate your argument. I hear a preacher announce for his text and topic the expediency of one of the institutions of his church. Do I not know beforehand that not possibly can he say a new and spontaneous word? Do I not know that, with all this ostentation of examining the grounds of the institution, he will do no such thing? Do I not know that he has pledged to himself not to look but at one side, the permitted side, not as a man, but as a parish minister? He's a retained attorney, and these heirs of the bench are the emptiest affectation. Well, most men have bound their eyes with one or another handkerchief and attached themselves to some one of these communities of opinion. This conformity makes them not false in a few particulars, authors of a few lies, but false in all particulars. Their every truth is not quite true. Their two is not the real two. Their four, not the real four. So that every word they say chagrins us, and we know not where to begin to set them right. Meantime, nature is not slow to equip us in the prison uniform of the party to which we adhere. We come to wear one cut of face and figure, and acquire by degrees the gentlest asinine expression. There is a mortifying experience in particular, which does not fail to wreak itself also in the general history. I mean, the foolish face of praise, the forced smile which we put on in company where we do not feel at ease in answer to conversation which does not interest us, the muscles not spontaneously moved, but moved by a low, usurping willfulness, grow tight about the outline of the face with a most disagreeable sensation.
Yeah, sounds bad.
It's,
you don't want to be like that.
It's morbid.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You see like signs of decline and signs of just morbidity.
Well, that's just like that's just people like siding with one side or the other and just chanting like basically being parrots of like whoever
Right.
they believe in.
And it's like, look, guys, just shut up, Skynet. All right. So we'll go back up to the top. So it doesn't matter. You're building Skynet anyway, and you don't even realize it. Good job. The objection
it's like a human.
No, I mean, no, we're doing it here.
Skynet,
like,
right?
Don't get me wrong. Like, whatever's going on here in the U.S., it's just like there's a few. I hate to even call them safeguards because it's more like happenstance of business and government than actual safeguards. But it's the same. It's all the same thing. Again, the concentration camp never disappears overnight, and the giant prison system doesn't just appear overnight, right? Like it's built over time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. The objection to conforming to usages that have come dead to you, that it scatters your force. Yes, and this is the problem with using other people's language. This is what Orwell understood. Like, you're literally letting someone else carve out your channels of thought. Like, you take their words, their ideas, their arguments, and now you've spent how much of your life where they wanted you to be? That's where they wanted you trapped, actually. They wanted to, like, they got you running in circles right? Like, that's the problem of picking up other people's language and talking but when you have a culture, it's like, well, you need a language. You need some sort of central unity for people to get along.
Yeah.
And then it seemed, again, we seem to run on our own volition, but it's just that it's not stable over time, regardless of any ideas. Right? Of course.
Yeah. So in there, and I think it's in book 5, Nietzsche says, it makes like kind of like the theory that consciousness, or at least the consciousness that we're aware of, our self-awareness, is kind of a byproduct of language. And language is like in its first uses, right? It was only used for communication with other beings, with other people of your species, right? Or other living things within your species, right? That's what communication is. And then when that internal dialogue became a thing, people were drawn from their attention from the outside world into the inside world, right?
Yes. We got lost on, if I could sum up like a whole lot of Nietzschean thought in this direction, I would say we got so lost on what it, as in like maybe ourselves or the world, we got so lost on what it means, we completely became lost from what it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
And the thing about language is that it's this is also what
the biological capacity. People get it wrong when they say they'll say it's arbitrary or it's meaningless or we made it up. It's like, no, language is a biological capacity. It's the conceptions that we inevitably agreed upon in theory we made up, but it was more like someone saw something and figured out a way to let you see it too. And thanks to them, we all get to see that.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
And this is the danger of, and this is why subpar rhetoric is, again, it just rots the mind. It turns people into zombies. On like the show you mentioned, the show The Walking Dead earlier. Here's my, The Walking Dead. That's referring to the living people, right?
Yeah.
In the title, like they're not talking about the zombies.
Yeah, I mean they're basically talking about the people who are alive. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the Walking Dead. They're the ones who's right. Their fate's sealed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I guess we should keep moving. But did you have something else you were gonna say or ask or bring up?
Well, I mean, we're all,
or you still going about the gay science? That's where we were at.
Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of like Walking Dead, right?
Oh yeah, no one's getting out.
Yeah, did you have anything?
They still want to. They still. I mean, you see it, like the desire, like it's still there. And it's like, why was anything here ever tragic or suffering? And it seems to me it's all because, the vision of forever And that notion of forever, like no one gets to hold on to it, and it's just it's upsetting to humanity.
Yeah, and so the thing is, when reading Zap, like you can read it as a like kind of a psychological, oh, this is kind of what humans do with their fear of death, but it's also sort of a, oh, like like if I were to say, like if I was Mao, right? And then I could be like, oh wow, I just read Zap. Okay, now I know what I can do with my people to
That's
control them.
the danger of all it is back to the point of ideas are dangerous, and the truth is painful and cold and not necessarily good and often harmful.
Yeah. All right. Did you have any more commentary on that last paragraph?
Well, it's a long paragraph.
Yeah.
Let's do a few more real quick.
Yeah, it's a very long paragraph. I was just
and then I wonder some of these some of these actually might be longer paragraphs that I broke up with commentary and notes that we're not looking at, but
oh shoot, yeah, I'm actually just looking at the essay from my phone, so if there's any notes that you have, just kind of cut me off and just like share them.
Oh no, I took them along, like that was just kind of playing around with it at the time.
Okay.
Let's see. Do your work and you shall reinforce yourself. A man must consider what a blind man's buff this game of conformity. If I know your sect, I anticipate your argument. It's pretty, I think it's pretty self-explanatory these days. And I guess, in it's like, in its modern incarnation, it's not even that complex. It's not even a sect. It's just like, okay, name, brand, identity, sub-identity A, sub-identity B, sub-identity, all the stuff that probably Skynet knows, let's say, fits into this. I anticipate your argument. I hear a preacher announce for this text and topic the expediency of one of the institutions of his church. Do I know what beforehand? Yeah, right. Like what like he has to follow the line. Like the Apollonian has already been set, right? The sun has already risen and set here.
Yeah.
Like we cannot allow for nothing new. Most things new are deadly. That's why you keep them out. That's why you build a Skynet to keep them out. Right? Just total control. Do I not know as he pushed himself to not as a man, but a parish minister, right? He's playing a part, right? He's an actor. Nietzsche called the modern age many things, the atomistic age, the age of public opinion, and he also called it the age of the actor.
Yeah.
And that's the foresight in that, like that's pretty impressive. I guess it makes sense if everyone's getting blown apart, and these are the results, these are the consequences, this is what's at stake, and this is our pageantry of it all, then of course it's all very theatrical.
Yeah, you got to put that disguise on.
Yep. And then on with the parades and the struggle sessions and the virtues, right? Or that, what would we call it? I think maybe last time, preaching in the street, or what is it? Giving charity and, in front of making sure everyone sees, and saying their prayers out loud, right? And this, so I guess,
well, there's also another thing in there. There is a mortifying experience in particular which does not fail to wreak itself also in the general history. I mean, the foolish face of praise, the forced smile which we put on in company where we do not feel at ease in answer to conversation which does not interest us.
Yep, the muscles not spontaneously moved. But moved by a low usurping willfulness, right? That's Skynet thinking. Grow tight about the outline of the face. Yeah, well, you think about it. Your will is literally usurped here. In what? Yeah. In the spirit of the foolish face of praise, right? In that spirit, in that vein. It's not even your own volition.
Yeah.
Grow tight about the outline of the face with the most disagreeable sensation. Yeah, it sounds painful.
Yeah.
We could go on and on, I suppose, but we should probably just keep it moving.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Okay. For nonconformity, the world whips you with its displeasure. And therefore, a man must know how to estimate a sour face. The bystanders look askance on him in the public street or in the friend's parlor. If this aversation had its origin in contempt and resistance like his own, he might well go home with a sad contentance. But the sour faces of the multitude, like their sweet faces, have no deep cause, but are put on and off as the wind blows and a newspaper directs.
Oh, one sec. So I'd just like to
Yeah.
pause there real quick. The sour
Mhm.
face of the multitude, like their sweet faces, have no deep cause. This reminds me of Nietzsche talking about, I guess he called the old Greeks were profound, or was it that they were simple from their profundity or profound from their simplicity? But I see this as like the opposite of that. Like
Yeah.
this is childlike as childlike gets. This is just, tumbleweeds on the wind. There's nothing of substance there. There's nothing of value there. It's a very
Yeah.
shallow culture and society. It's very wide and broad, but very shallow. Like if you wanted to drown yourself in it or immerse yourself in it, I don't even know that you could. Like you could lay in it, but it's what our, I guess with what we valued, I guess it really is a country of, sex and violence are two of our biggest products.
Yeah. And drugs, of course.
Oh yeah, those are as popular as ever. Wonder if Skynet allows drug. Probably not. Actually, that's way too impure. They would not be okay with that. Or at least not the state approved drugs.
Not right now, at least.
Well, I mean, they'll allow state sanctioned alcohol, cigarettes, or other things, but because these are even measures
eventually.
like if they observe that Skynet observes that you stop drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes suddenly, like that's a sign that you may be possibly having thought crimes, or however you want to frame it. No, I mean, like this well could be our future. So I'm just, it's the large scale surveillance networks. I mean, do you remember a few years ago when everyone found out the NSA was spying on everyone in America?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh no. And then it's like, well, on with the show, right? Like the stage show must continue. Yeah, we weren't going to be interrupted.
Back to sleep.
Of course. And then the most dangerous people are the ones who tell you, like, trust me the most. Mm-hmm. The most dangerous people are the ones telling you don't have anything to worry about. Yeah. And you're like, I'm not even talking like the crazy conspiracy theories. I'm just talking about like the very basis of like modern, like Machiavellian mass power world manipulating like powers of mass wealth and mass influence and mass technology, and basically the handful of people that are behind it, but then the billions of other wills that all go along with it. That's what's insane to think about it, is that side of it, going like, okay, well, if you actually step back, what are we looking at? I'm not just thinking as an American, or as a America I'm getting it backwards, as an American in America, right? And I'm not thinking about China is even a political opponent, or right. I'm just, if you step back from it and go like, what are these things up to?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Like if we met aliens, what would be their social hierarchy, right? What would their ranking system be? And even in like, I can't, it's hard to conceive of them without projecting something human into them. Because it's like, well, to me, it's like they'd probably either be a very open sort of being because they were that powerful and they have nothing to fear, or they would be like space fascists, basically like the CCP in space, right? That's how the whole bean counter system works. It doesn't matter. It's just a hive.
Vader.
Yeah, it's just a hive basically, right? And everyone has their function. So
but like think about like being like so far out in space, like so far away. But I guess their technology would be so good that they could probably they probably communicate through wormholes. Like they send a signal, then it goes through a wormhole. So it travels.
Isn't that Isaac Asimov or one of those? I think that was one of those old guys, or it's definitely as Orson Scott Card.
I'm not sure. What are you referring to?
His book Ender's Game. He did a bunch of books.
Oh, Ender's Game. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Skynet canceled them, but
I've seen the movie. I haven't read the book.
That's irrelevant.
Okay, let me finish.
Yeah, so it's just it was just that we had to take a moment there. You want to go ahead and keep going?
Yet is the discontent of the multitude more formidable than that of the Senate and the college. It is easy enough for a firm man who knows the world to brook the rage of the cultivated classes. Their rage is decorous and prudent, for they are timid, as being very vulnerable themselves. But when to their feminine rage the indignation of the people is added, when the ignorant and the poor are roused, when the unintelligent brute force that lies at the bottom of society is made to growl and mow, it needs the habit of magnanimity and religion to treat it godlike as a trifle of no concernment. Then I'm going to move on with this next paragraph just because it kind of continues on with it. The other terror that scares us from self-trust is our consistency, a reverence for our past act or word, because the eyes of others have no other data for computing our orbit than our past actions, and we are loath to disappoint them. So yeah, that last, like the big paragraph.
Yeah, it's fun, huh?
Yeah, then that smaller paragraph is kind of like the resolution.
Yeah, a reverence for our past act or word.
When the ignorant and the poor are aroused, when the unintelligent brute force that lies at the bottom of society.
Well, it's kind of like it makes that last part makes me think of the tightrope walker. The other terror that scares us from self-trust is our consistency, a reverence for our past act or word, because the eyes of others have no data for computing our orbit other than our past acts, and we are loath to disappoint them. The notion of like, oh, I have to impress you, I have to be put upon, be put upon by you, like I am here for you to wait and measure, as if you even could, So going back to the top, non-conformity of the world whips you with this displeasure, right? This is friction, and therefore a man must know how to estimate a sour face, and this is know who and what you're dealing with. Don't fool yourself. The bystanders look askance upon him in the public street, in the friend's parlor. This aversion had its, we talked about this earlier, but we keep going. This aversion had its origin in contempt and resistance like his own. He might well go home with a sad countenance, but the sour face of the multitude, like their sweet faces, have no deep cause, but are put off and on as the wind blows and a newspaper directs, right? It's basically, it's the lowest common denominator. You know what?
Yeah.
Let Skynet set it. If that's what humanity wants, then that's what we deserve. So it is easy enough for a firm man who knows the world to brook the rage of the cultivated classes, right? And to brook, right? Like to channel, to stream, stream. Their rage is decorous and prudent, for they're timid, right? And the note, this is just more money, more problems, right? The rage is decorous and prudent, for they're timid as being very vulnerable themselves. That's the wealthy classes.
Yeah.
And right, you see when things go against them, they have to figure, oh, how do we brook this rage? How do we channel these forces? Mao did it in China, it worked. You see how the people in this country now are doing it with the populace now. They have the media outlets, the government outlets, all these other things, and they're trying to spin a story, and they're trying to press people's consciousness, and they're trying to sell all sorts of nonsense. And with a limited degree of success. But the bigger issue is that the kind of pathology that's going on is like, there's usually these situations don't end without ruin. Because let me ask you, man, when a society goes pathological, as it has been observed in history, what's the breaking point? To break a trance, it's almost like it's not enough to just say, sometimes, like in very rare cases, like my dad told me the story of a lynching that was disrupted and stopped with a single word. And like everyone just kind of wandered off bewilderedly, and they didn't hang the man. This is in America back when, right? Black man about to be lynched. And in this case, a single word from someone in the crowd, spooked them, and they just, kind of woke them up, and they all went their separate ways, like going, hey, do you realize that's another human being right there, right? That's your neighbor.
Yeah.
As an example, right? That is another American, whether you like it or not. Oh, I don't know. He told me, I don't know where he found it, because he's been far and over and wide read and all that stuff. But he's told me, some of these stories along these lines. I don't know where he found them. Let's see here.
Yeah, man, that's some scary stuff. My U.S. history teacher told us this gruesome story. I'm not going to get into it, but we all just we were all like 16, 17, just like sitting in class, like dead silent. Like you'd like walk out of the class, and it was worse than when previous teachers have described the Holocaust, because when you describe one person and one person's like their horrible like death or whatever, you just like you're walking out of class and like for the rest of the day you just have like not a
Oh,
good
right.
feeling in your
Oh,
stomach.
but here's the thing, and there's been so many genocides, and there's been so
Mhm.
many like ethnic cleansings. It's not, it's not limited to time and place.
Yeah.
They're still going on right now.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's good to have a history teacher that tells you the true
Right.
story, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, history is rife with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Both old and new cases of all these kind of
Mm-hmm.
behaviors. Again, I guess Nietzsche taught us to be better readers. He also taught us to be better analysts.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see a few last things here. Like this, but when to their feminine rage the indignation of the people is added, when the ignorant and the poor are aroused, when it is the intelligent brute force that lies at the bottom of society is made to growl and mow, and needs the habit of magnanimity and religion to treat it godlike as a trifle of no concernment. Yeah, I guess Skynet doesn't care,
Yeah.
right? Skynet will manage it all perfectly. It's like, okay, this much alcohol in this batch. The other terror that scares us from trust is our consistency. Yeah, this is, and I think if I recall, he kind of he starts throwing stuff out the window more rapidly and rapidly as he goes on along here.
Inner past acts. We are loath to disappoint them because the eyes of others have no other data for computing our orbit than our past acts, and we are loath to disappoint them. So when we like fall out of a habit, right? When we do something new, people are surprised. And like sometimes they're even scared, right?
Yes, absolutely. People don't like change. Again, I
like
got my
even
eyes
as a
on
kid,
you.
like when you
you changed?
Yeah. Like as a kid, when you see your parents do something that they've never done, or like you see them like because like usually they don't dress up or something, and like one day that you dress up, then you're like all freaked out because you're like, oh whoa, I've never seen you look like that, or like I've never seen you say a word like that, I've never seen you talk like that, I've never seen you walk like that, or whatever.
Right.
You get freaked out.
Right. Oh, I mean, again, anything that goes against consistency, because we like the stability. It's obvious that humanity likes stability, kind of needs it
I
in
eat the
most
same
regards.
food every day at the same time.
Right. So, if this is the heaviest burden, right? Like, hopefully you got a good answer for that little demon.
Oh, absolutely. I
Can you
love the
like
food
peanut
I
butter?
eat.
Can you like peanut butter and jelly and bacon forever? Yes, yours forgot.
Yes. I will
That's
eat
why
my chicken and rice
that's
with
why the old
sriracha
world
and broccoli
Europeans were
every day.
upset. They didn't have enough. I feel like that could almost be like an American analysis of old world Europe. Be like, oh yeah, like they were just mad because they didn't have enough goods and services. I was going to say because they didn't have peanut butter and jelly bacon, but obviously it's more than that. It's like that's the problem with like shallow thinkers, materialist thinkers, or even solely rationalists, because like the rationalists are often the systems thinkers, and they get carried away, and they're the type of people who wind up building the Skynets. They're the biggest contributors, every last one of them. They think they're humanitarians. They think they're bringing some great thing to fruition, and it's like, nope, not in the slightest, guys. You already built Skynet. I said that couldn't have, I don't know if that could have happened without Microsoft, but it definitely helped. Because the guy I can't remember his name. He was one of the foremost developers of facial recognition software. He came out of China, and he came out of that Microsoft lab. He was working there. And if I recall correctly, he was a Uyghur, right? He's not a traditional Han Chinese, that's the correct race if you live in China, right? That's the superior one. And you're not, you don't have those Islamic origins or those religious origins, because like from the analytic perspective, Jung called things like religion an extra mundane grounding principle. And to him, his notion was it's what would keep someone from falling into a mass pathology or a erroneous thought pattern, you could say. But in reality, you see that religious mythos actually don't contain any real power to prevent pathology, and often, and more so than not, lead to and develop them themselves. Or you could also question how much do people's frustrated wills and their frustrated visions of the world, let's say the frustrated perceptions, how much does that further antagonize and drive them? Because again, if it's, you know, if the world and the nature of the universe as we understand it is balanced upon, you know, opposing forces, you know, even the notion of politics, it's like, again, how is it that with humanity, you get a group of people, even the same people in the same race and the same culture and society, and they have a god or a political system, it's like inevitably they split along temperaments down two lines. And it's usually those who are more liberal and those who are more conservative, you know, and that you have this force in the world. And it's just, we've been cycling through this a long time. And it's like, yeah, you know, maybe a Skynet will fix it once and for all. Like maybe they'll get really good at it and they'll even let us keep the piece of the brain that they cut out. Like in the long term, now I'm thinking of the longest term of like what's going to keep the apes on this planet sane. It's like it might actually come, like it makes sense to me at least, you know, that could well be necessary, because look at all, like, I mean, like, I don't know what the CCP is going to do about the Middle East. Like that's a big question, right? Like if they really are, you know, going as far and wide as possible, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with how much they're investing in quote, you know, what we call developing nations.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we don't. Well, but you know, we're mostly focusing on Skynet at the moment in this aspect of collectivism and so modern social life. Because again, this is what's changed. Like those old atrocities, it's like that all happened, and there's still atrocities now. And it's not so much just the atrocities now; it's the fact that, you know, we can be rendered blind. You know, they can blind us to as much as they want, as easily as they want, at least in terms of the larger mass. You know, an individual may or may not see through it. It looks to me that, you know, our education system was not prepared to deal with anything. And that's the thing. It's like, I'm not saying that they did or didn't intentionally do anything. I think they're so inept and they lack such a, you know, I mean, the US government and the US people, that we've lacked such a vision and such any conception of what we are as a people, nation, and, you know, let me frame it this way. That in theory, America could be the most powerful nation in the world. But as it is, no one looks at America and goes, oh, I see it. The genius is in the people. It's like, no, it's not. Absolutely not. Right. Yeah. Like somehow the country's still running despite its people. Like it's definitely, like, I think about this for all the troubles the last few years. If it wasn't for like the people going to work and making sure like the infrastructure still works, we would have been screwed already. But thank God, like the decadence hasn't gotten, and the rot hasn't gotten that far. You know, so far it's cultural and it's familial and it's governmental and it's a lot of things, but you know, people are still working to a degree, but it seems like they don't want to do that anymore either. You know, I'm talking specifically about, have you seen like all the just article and statistics coming out about that stuff here at the moment?
Could you just say that again?
Have you heard any of the like the information about just people not wanting to work and thoughts of government assistance and things like, you know, what's currently happening with like the labor, what they're calling a labor shortage right now?
All I know is that my dad keeps telling me nobody wants to work anymore, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's the old, like, no one ever wanted to work, period. Like we wanted like a hunting ground in the sky. It could just be forever.
It's like,
maybe we just fight.
You mean we don't want to be slaves? Oh, interesting. Who would have thought? But of course,
well, that's what I'm saying. If Skynet can build the ideal daycare, then look, no one will have to work. Again, we don't have to be animals anymore. We can be fungus. We can just be like some weird species that just withers on the vine. Like maybe those who live more outside of Skynet will have something resembling what we once called a human life. And then everyone else, it's, you know, a hamster wheel or whatever it is that people conceive of. Yeah,
but I mean, we're kind of on a hamster wheel already.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, that's Sisyphus is happy, right?
Because like we can condemn like their system like all we want, but like, you know,
it's not about condemnation, system, right? It's not condemnation. Well, that's what I'm trying to point out, that it's not going to remain their system. That a giant police surveillance state already exists in the US, and they're just going to get more and more sophisticated. And again, it's not a condemnation, it's an observation.
Yes.
And it's like, apparently this was necessary. Apparently people couldn't help themselves anyway. Like I'm observing that. I'm saying, yes, they didn't have a choice in this. They didn't have a will in this. They didn't have strength in this. They've never had strength in this.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why the genius of the crowd is their destruction. They can't not understanding art. They hate art.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely nothing wrong with condemning it. I'll tell you that.
Oh, you don't want Skynet? Well, that sounds like with thought crimes.
Yeah.
That's how you just flag Skynet.
Well, good. That's all right. I don't really care.
Let's see where we at.
I'm good with thought crime and all I want, all day long, every day. But why should you keep your head over your shoulder? Why drag about this corpse of your memory, lest you contradict somewhat you have stated in this or that public place? Suppose you should contradict yourself. What then? It seems to be a rule of wisdom never to rely on your memory alone, scarcely even in acts of pure memory, but to bring the past for judgment into the thousand-eyed present and live ever in a new day. In your metaphysics, you have denied personality to the deity. Yet when the devout motions of the soul come, yield to them heart and life, though they should clothe the God with shape and color. Leave your theory as Joseph, his coat in the hand of the harlot, and flee.
Yeah, see, that reminds me of the raft parable, or more like kind of like the raft parable, right? Once you cross the river, it's like, hey, if you're back on dry land, like you don't need that raft, like you're going to break your back carrying it, right? Leave the coat, flee, get thee gone, I guess. And this is a good point. That notion of consistency, that if you concerned yourself with consistency in the modern age, it's one thing with your, like, you might have your wife or your brother, someone, the people around you have damn well reason to expect a certain amount of consistency, naturally speaking, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, to try to worry yourself beyond whatever your duties may be, because I couldn't say, right? Like beyond whatever that is, it's like, why would you ever try and explain you're opening yourself up to, in theory, billions of people, because in the modern day, billions of people can view, billions of people can watch, billions of people can listen.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing to consider. This again, once more, what's different from the past. This is a very big change. I think it's ironic. Well, it's not right. It's not ironic. But, that when we can communicate and talk to each other as never before, it seems like people are upset as never before. Or maybe it's that in the past, they would have been just as unhappy, but they just didn't have the megaphone to do it.
Yeah, to tell people.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, that's probably what it is. Like in the past, like people were probably just as unhappy. But
yeah,
the only difference
logical
is that people know about it more.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and they know more themselves, or think they know more. And again, opening yourselves to the troubles of the world. It's like it's even the concerns of Skynet. It's like, okay, well, in theory, Skynet's already everywhere. It already exists. Yeah. It's like the concern, like that's them and their people and their concerns, but to the degree that I don't know that there's been a dominant world power in history that ever fell out of first place without going to war with whoever was coming up on their tail. Yeah. That's a real thing to concern beyond just pity, but we'll see there.
Yeah, we
don't know how it's going to shake out. It's very weird. I don't know. The world has a very incestuous relationship with the CCP. It's just, it's pretty disgusting, really. It's pretty gross.
Yeah. Let's read this next.
Right. I mean, and what's great, and let me clarify though.
Yeah.
Because it's important. Yeah. What's gross about it is that they have that relationship and then again, parade their virtues in the streets. Like, the CCP in a certain sense, like in at least a few regards, they almost are more honest, but go on.
Yeah, I was just going to read the next paragraph because it kind of concludes the last one.
Yeah.
A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. With consistency, a great soul has simply nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with his shadow on the wall. Speak what you think now in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow thinks in hard words again, though it contradict everything you said today. Ah, so you shall be sure to be misunderstood. Is it so bad, then, to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood.
So there's a good definition for what great is.
Yes. And just a few years later, comes up Nietzsche, the most misunderstood writer in the history of writers.
With Nietzsche, I think back to his lines about, the child, he's in the other room, he's conversing with himself and his fellows, and he'll make us old ones obsolete. Or he doesn't say obsolete, I don't remember the words he uses, but he says that in there. I like something that. A foolish consistency is a hobgoblin. So the foolish consistency, again, this is like a little rut to hoe. It's busy work. It's menial labor. To a creative person and to a free spirit, it's slavery. Like Nietzsche talks a lot about one's life being one's own experiment, and the things you do and change and messing with your habits and experiment. It's like you have one shot at this, and you're just gonna, again, do this little. It's like turning life into a crossword puzzle almost. It's tedium. With consistency, a great soul has simply nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with his shadow on the wall. Speak what you think now in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow brings in hard words again, though it contradict everything you said today. Right, because maybe tomorrow requires something new. And if you're repeating yourself, right, this is how old people go blind. You got to be careful about this. Make sure you don't go blind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a phrase in my fraternity. Yesterday is gone forever. Tomorrow is yet to be. And it's like the past and future, they don't exist, right?
Right.
There's only the now.
The mind flits there, though. Like it's you see that people's past and their future just wrecks them here and now. Mm-hmm. I think it could be regret, remorse, or sadness over the past, or it could be fear over the future. And it's like through that, a nightmare takes place in the present.
Yes.
Life becomes a nightmare in the present. Happens time and time again.
Yes.
So with consistency, a great soul simply has nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with the shadows on the wall. Speak what you. Okay, have you read that already? So you shall be sure to be misunderstood. That's fun. Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? And this is like, Nietzsche hit this sort of stuff home on more than one occasion. Mm-hmm. Or the very fact that he focuses on these people so specifically in his criticism tells you that there's actually something there to criticize, because, out of everyone Nietzsche mentions in history who had existed up until this point, there's plenty of stuff he didn't bother to write about or take the time with. Yeah. And, it's for good reason. He only had he had his work, and he only had so much time, and
he wrote a lot.
What he could. Yeah, no, he. Do you remember that line from this essay where Emerson says, "There is that certain type of which I'd go to jail for, though."
Yeah,
like that's what I think of Nietzsche doing his work, and I think like that's for who Nietzsche wrote. He wasn't concerned. It's why he criticized it. It's like why anything and everything gets the hammer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's not.
There was only one concern. There was only ever one concern. It was our children. It's the future. That's been the story all along. And it's like, well, we've been so concerned with that for so long that it doesn't matter that we've botched and degraded children in the present, right? Mm-hmm. It's that what are we going to do to fix them tomorrow? And it's this sorry ass excuse that's been drug out for what looks to me thousands of years now, and it's still manifest in the politics, and it's there in Skynet, And again, maybe that's just our art and our confession. Maybe that's what it came down to.
Yeah, maybe.
I say all this knowing that our time's almost up soon. I'm not putting a bow on anything else. Like, let me see something real quick, because I want to say this is the part in the essay where Emerson gets into a point where he mentions that. Actually, is it Emerson? Is it, do you remember, tell me, do you remember, is it in this essay where Emerson says, the philosopher, he's not actually making a judgment, he's just laying people's words at their feet? Is that in this essay, or am I making this up?
I'm not sure.
It could be in this
we will
essay.
Discover it.
It might be Thoreau though. It could be
Thoreau.
It could be someone or something else like that's real close.
Yeah. So,
I just thought it was relevant.
Thoreau's the one who wrote Civil
Walden.
Disobedience, right?
Yeah, and I think Walden, or obviously Walden is most famous. But I think that was him on Civil Disobedience because he was an active abolitionist himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've read Civil Disobedience in high school, but I haven't read, or I might have read Waldo, but I'm not sure.
Oh, here's a fun part. This next part of the essay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead reading.
Quote, you can read it.
I suppose no man can violate his nature. All the sallies of his will are rounded in by the law of his being, as the inequalities of Andes and Himalaya are insignificant in the curve of the sphere. Nor does it matter how you gauge and try him. A character is like an acrostic or Alexandrian stanza. Read it forward, backward, or across, it still spells the same thing. In this pleasing, contrite wood life which God allows me, let me record day by day my honest thought without prospect or retrospect, and I cannot doubt it will be found symmetrical, though I meant it not and see it not. My book should smell of the pines and resound with the hum of insects. The swallow over my window should interweave that thread of straw he carries in his bill into my web also. We pass for what we are. Character teaches above our wills. Men imagine that they communicate their virtue or vice only by overt actions, and do not see that virtue or vice emit a breath every moment. And he's right there. It's why Diogenes is so profound compared to any philosopher. I'm trying to avoid an unintentional rhyme here, but it's why he has such a profundity, and he never, if I recall correctly, did he write anything down? I don't think he did he? He was written of, right? Yeah, it was beneath him. Writing was beneath him. That's amazing. Everyone else, right? We had to paint, we wanted, an everlasting hunting ground, right? Or we wanted a Christian afterlife, or we wanted the perfect government. And he said to hell with all of it. Yeah. This is, I see through you. But I like this because there's a certain aspect to, it's about the roundness and fullness of character here. There's a certain aspect of, I don't want to say eternal recurrence in this, but it reminds me of that, the inequalities in the Andes and the Himalaya are nothing in the curve of the sphere, and even though these are the tallest mountains on earth, that in the whole sphere of it, it's like those little irregularities are nothing. Yeah. Like everything is rounded out and made level. Mm-hmm. And then this reminds me of Nietzsche too, an acrostian stanza, right? That's like a stanza that if you read it across and then down, it's got like, it spells a word kind of, that it describes. You just Google it. Google will tell you what to think, like Skynet.
Yeah.
Read it forward, backward, across, it still spells the same thing. So yeah, and then I guess you could view some of these next lines as a bit, pretentious or artsy fartsy, but it's I think it's a sweet metaphor. Yeah. My book should smell the pines or resound, because and this means something to me because I know what all that smells and looks and sounds like. So it makes me, I wish I was there right now. The swallow over my window, and this makes me think of him writing. Just the imagery is similar, right? The swallow over my window should interweave that thread of straw he carries in his bill into my web. Also, that there's just there's like I'm just imagining him there day after day observing these things. Yeah. So
character teaches about our wills.
Yes.
Now that is an important sentence.
Yes. Very simply, is it weak or strong? Mm-hmm. That's that was the beginning of the last podcast, right? We read the lines from Beyond Good and Evil. Yeah. Right. It's not a matter of free will; it's a matter of weak and strong wills. Your character will reveal. I had a friend of mine recently say, real astute friend of mine, said something like, Christianity tells you to concern yourself over the actions, and he said the actions, and I said, yeah. I said, and the famous line is, by their deeds you shall know them. Mm-hmm. And my friend's like, yeah, screw that. He's, I want to know what your intentions are. And like, I'm right there with them. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Your supposed goodwill, your supposed pity. Like, nah.
Yeah, what is your intention?
And I mean that for secular Americans as well, because I mean they're Christian. They may not realize it, that their morality is Christian and that it comes from European philosophy and European, all these religions and stuff. But it's in them too. It's in all of us, whether we like it or not. It's been the whole civilizational soup. But again, maybe Skynet will, make it so people, if people are a little bit more better off, maybe Skynet will round that out. Maybe everyone will get enough gruel, and that'll be enough. I don't know.
Yeah, not to bring up Sam Harris here, but yeah, his argument on free will is just complete. It's just complete bullshit. It's just like, yeah, but like, yeah,
man,
sure.
All that stuff always bothered me. Even like, like anything like I think, therefore I am, to that sort of stuff. It's just, it bothered me from like the earliest times I ever heard it. None of it ever sounded right.
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard it, I was like, oh yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And then like, just like thinking about it, like over the course of the next few weeks, I'm just like, that's just like, isn't that kind of circular logic? It's just like, it doesn't really like, I think, therefore I am. It's all kind of implies.
We're really good we're good at that, right? You just chase our tails in circle for another few millennia.
Yeah, it's a snake biting his own tail until finally it's gone. Like, it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Well, once it stops making sense to itself, maybe that's when it dies.
Yeah, because like the thing is, like, the only reason that there's any talk about that people are debating that there is no free will is because like they're trying to, well, it's kind of like the hyper atheists, right? They're like, oh, I'm atheist, like
we're gonna proselytize for atheism,
like isn't real, like there's no such thing as God.
I'm like, yeah, but I can smell your Christianity from like miles away, dude.
Yeah,
like,
then
you're filled with all sorts of Christian morals and values.
Will, because it's something that's like very Christian, right? They have to say there is no free will because there's no God or like whatever. And then
no, it's like, see, I almost think like, no, it's like, dude, let people have their, like, again, let them have their extra mundane principle. It's like, it's been the way of the world since whatever. It's worked up to a point, and maybe again, maybe Skynet has to level it off. We'll see.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Like, I mean in the sense that you see that it seems like if people aren't subjugated, they need to be subjugated. And that if people come off their subjugation, well, like, look what happened when Europe tried that. Look what happened when a lot of these other nations in the world try that. They get a great idea and think they're going to go somewhere grand, and it's just a train wreck.
Okay, I'll read through this paragraph. It's quite hefty. There will be an agreement in whatever variety of actions, so they be each honest and natural in their hour. For of one will, the actions will be harmonious, however unlike they seem. These varieties are lost sight of at a little distance, at a little height of thought. One tendency unites them all. The voyage of the best ship is a zigzag line of 100 tacks. See the line from a sufficient distance, and it straightens itself to the average tendency. Your genuine action will explain itself and will explain your other genuine actions. Your conformity explains nothing. Act singly, and what you have already done singly will justify you now. Greatness appeals to the future. If I can be firm enough today to do right and scorn eyes, I must have done so much right before as to defend me now. Be it how it will, do right now. Always scorn appearances, and you always may. The force of character is cumulative. All the foregone days of virtue work their health into this. What makes the majesty of the heroes of the Senate and the field, which so fills the imagination? The consciousness of a train of great days and victories behind. They shed a united light on the advancing actor. He is attended as by a visible escort of angels. That is it which throws thunder into Chatham's voice and dignity into Washington's port, and America into Adam's eye. Honor is venerable to us because it is no ephemeris. It is always ancient virtue. We worship it today because it is not of today. We love it and pay it homage because it is not a trap for our love and homage, but is self-dependent, self-derived, and therefore of an old, immaculate pedigree. even of showing in a young person.
Yes. Rank, order, file. We love it and pay homage to it because it is not a trap for our love and homage, but is self-dependent, self-derived, and therefore of an immaculate pedigree.
Mhm.
Right? Honor is venerable because it's one of the few things that is real. In fact, your character over time tells me exactly who you are. He says here that your conformity explains nothing, but I say it explains either your cowardice or your laziness, or your weakness, or maybe maybe you really don't care. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's relevant. Not about that anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't explain anything about who you are. Like if you do something that's in line with
I
what
wanted
other
to know
people
who
do.
you are. I asked you a question. Why'd you give me someone else's answer? Like this is very common. Like, or again, like, maybe Skynet will tell us, Google that shit real quick. No, and he tells you to always scorn appearances, and that's because your action, it could be the best thing in the world for you and or everybody else, and someone else might not knowing that, not discerning that, to them it's going to look foolish, it's going to look evil, it's going to look any number of superstitious ideals or ideas, or however it may be taken.
Yeah, I mean, you can just like all the time people will hide behind like other people. They'll hide behind authority figures, or they'll hide behind the crowd, or like whatever. And for one, partly because they're afraid of one, humiliation, or they're afraid of a punishment, or they're afraid of who knows what, right?
Of course they're afraid.
Stand
Absolutely.
out in front of the crowd. They won't stand out, or like they won't rebel against their superiors.
It's the old proverb, right? The nail that sticks out the most gets the hammer.
Yeah.
And then Skynet says, like, we'll make sure all the nails are in good.
Yes.
Like, we'll nail them in so good, they'll never be able to poke their heads out ever again. Right? Yeah. No, and I mean, no, but I mean, see, the thing that goes along with living in a pathological society or under strict repression or apartheid or any number of things like this is the bigger issue is that it creates deeper splits and fractures in the human psyche underneath that pressure. Because with that great external pressure, if it has no release valve, and if it has no actual way, because it exists, it's a principle in nature that a pressurized system, it either finds that equilibrium or it blows out, right? It cannot sustain itself. It'll blow itself apart due to the different differentials, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, entropy either always increases or remains the same in an isolated system.
Yes. And then, so within the human mind, it's no different. It's a closed loop system. Yeah. It takes on external stimuli, just like, I don't know. Would you call a river a closed loop or an open? It's hard to say when it's one big waterway and the waters are both salt and you can find water no matter where you go deep enough, right? It's like, I don't know what we exactly consider that.
I mean, it's all a part of one system.
Yes, whether we understand it or not.
It's called the water cycle, right? So
right.
So I'd say a closed loop.
Right. And that's just having fun on the side. Back to the human mind, same thing. Yeah. Closed loop system. Can it maintain? And in the modern day, so far, the answer is no. But it's not like we haven't seen it before. Again, history seems to be pretty cyclical.
Yeah.
Given the right circumstances, plague, famine, war. There's always a plague. There's always a famine. There's always a war. There's always a nation coming together, and there's always a nation falling apart.
Yeah.
Right, of this lineage or that lineage. We've seen it time and time again. And then eventually the people kind of come to their senses. But it's like my question for you, back to, I think I asked you about it earlier, of like, what does it take? It seems like it takes a lot of madness and mayhem and for people to reach a point of proper disgust or shame or hatred for themselves to go like, oh yeah, I guess it's pretty messed up that, we destroyed, an entire country, let's say, or an entire people, and it's like, okay, why would you consider that coming to your senses? Because why would it otherwise even matter? And I guess it's just the notion, are we anything more than just dumb, blind animals? That's why they're really ashamed. right? Dancing to someone else's tune.
Yeah.
It's
Or dancing to
look,
something that's off tune.
now I know you said you wanted to do a good 3 to 4 hour podcast today, but I'm also aware that we're almost at the 2 hour mark.
Yeah.
Wait, let's
Yeah.
see. Let's see. Did we cover? Let's make sure we covered this one well, real quick, and then that'll be good. I must have done so at the right ways. What? Let me ask you this. What else jumped out at you in there?
Let me get back on it.
Your conformity explains nothing. Act singly, and what you have already done singly will justify you now. Greatness appeals to the future.
We worship it today because it's not of today. We love it
yeah.
and pay it homage because it is not a trap for our love and homage, but is self-dependent, self-derived, and therefore of an old, immaculate pedigree, even if it is shown in a young person.
Right.
So,
it doesn't matter. It's what it is. Power. It's power, and it could be intellectual. It could be artistic. It could be athletic. It could be government. It doesn't matter, right? It's like he's talking about honor here, but generally, it's like we're conferring the notion of honor onto something that actually matters, or that we value, that we in fact value, and that we in fact say matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, why do we find it honorable? It's like, well, because we know that the athlete, he doesn't wake up one day and he's a world champ. It's that through a million little plays, a million little games, a million little back and forth, including a million little injuries. Same thing with a great writer, through a million thrown away pages, eventually they got good. Things like that.
Yep. A trillion.
Right. How many losses?
Top of the mountain.
Yeah. And how many losses to get that win, and how many battles lost to win the war, right? All these things come to mind. And it's like things like honor, things like rank and order, things like why we respect certain characteristics and things in human beings and over others, or maybe, and also the distinction of why we respect these and never those. Because I think there's plenty of things that you could say is almost never those. I would say I think it's kind of like they're out of fashion at the moment, and even bringing them up would be atavistic. Like I would say this, I'm not a fan of the state. I'm not a fan of government. I'm not even a fan of punishment, but I would love to see the American government reinstitute, what do they call it? Corporal punishment. Like any American who commits violence against another American, doesn't matter who, what, when, where, why, public caning on top of whatever the normal crap is, because if we're at a point where people don't understand that other people's it's one thing. It's bad enough when someone gets in your space and thinks like that. Well, they might assume that you're equal, and then they might assume that you just exist for their entertainment, or to answer their questions, or to deal, or to answer, whatever it may be. Someone just assumes they can impose themselves on you right away. That's already like, depending on what animal you are, like you're already as good as dead in the wild. Luckily, we live within a civilization that shelters such clumsy people and such, careless people. But often it's not the case. Most people usually do themselves in that way, right? It's intentionally or otherwise.
Yes, it is.
It's like, and this reminds me of Nietzsche saying, in peace times, the warlike man attacks himself. Without a good fight, it seems like people just kind of stagnate. Like the good stagnates. Like liberalism in America has done and been a lot of great things, but whatever its best is, it's definitely not whatever it's doing now, right? It's definitely not whatever's happened to it now.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, you see the influence, mass forces, you have media, you have government. It's like, this is according to them. This is what they wanted. To the degrees that the people voted for it and also wanted it, they're also asking for it too.
Yes.
We're going from the individual to the mass, right? So,
but of course, when you live in a binary system, it's hard. It's
right.
difficult.
Well, this is Emerson bringing it up himself earlier, right? His most famous quote, right? Like, it's easy to be this over here, it's easy to be that over there, but to be constant, or to be upright through all of it.
Yeah.
And to do so in a way, because I think what should be apparent is that done incorrectly, you see it basically spells instantaneous death, right? Yeah. Like, oh, you were too far out of line, you went too far, and something reacted.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, who's judging you? Again, the public again? Are we back to public opinion?
But so greatness, it's yourself.
Greatness appeals to the future. Yeah. And the best of the best learn to compete with themselves. Doesn't matter what it is. Even, because you could defeat the best person in the world, but then what? Then where are you left? A lot of times you see after monsters are slain and battles are won, the people who fight them go to pieces.
Yeah.
It almost seems like that's our real history over here in America to a certain degree, at least for you could say the monstrous forces that because we're far removed from again 60, 70 years ago. There's a lot of similars and constants and things that haven't changed, but in terms of the theater upon which it takes place,
it's a whole different kind of stage.
Yep. If I can be firm enough today to do as right and scorn eyes must have done so right before as to defend me now. He's saying, I guess over time the question is, do your actions add up and do you become a mountain, or were you like the grain of sand or the pile of sand that was instead blown away a grain at a time? There's a world of difference between that. Did your will make you bigger and more expansive and stronger in life, or did it make you worse and smaller or malformed? It's two different directions. These are binaries. I guess here's the thing. You can be perfectly average and in the middle. And that's where most people are. It's the definition of average, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So where in hell's name did, all this idealism and optimism ever even come from? Mm-hmm. Right. Like they were great at crafting lies to be like, these people, they're gonna do it. Yeah. They're going to find their heaven, right? They're going to get their utopia.
We the people.
So we could probably do a little bit more, but I feel like that's pretty good, man.
Yeah, we'll end it there. And just for housekeeping, we just finished page 7 of the essay, which will be on the link to the show notes. And with that said, it'll probably be more like a 6 to 9 part series.
Oh, I thought I had the whole thing on here. I might not even paste the whole essay into these notes. Oh, see,
we're only on we're like on page 8 now.
Well, it's dense. It's dense. And
it is dense. It is dense. But with that said, it'll probably be more like 6 to 9.
Skynet will be our digital oversoul. Yeah. And maybe its physical manifestations can be our Superman.
Yes. Maybe Skynet will shut it down before we're done. Who knows?
Yeah. Oh, you mean it'd be like a digital nihilist? It's like I've done the data. You guys suck.
All right. Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on, Mynaa.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everyone who's listening, who wants to get a little bit, some new perspectives, maybe some old perspectives, and some kind of somewhere in between perspectives on self-reliance. Thank you for listening. Follow me on Twitter. Well, follow the podcast on Twitter, not me.
Oh, don't forget to plug my Twitter.
Yeah. Well, stay away from me. Just follow the podcast, not me. Go check out Mynaa's website. It's bezabazaar.com. He's got a bunch of aphorisms on there. He's got excerpts from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It's really an amazing website, well written, some great political commentary, social commentary, psychological commentary, you name it. He's a genius, and it's awesome. So go check it out. And without further ado, enjoy the rest of your day, evening, night, whatever it is. Go enjoy yourselves. Thank you for listening.